So Frank Mrvan, of course, the third, is the trustee of North Township. And he'll take your calls at 219-845-1100. They take care of poor relief around this area, these parts. And he also takes care of Wicker Park and all that goes along with that, along with the cemeteries over here in Hessville and some other things. But you know what the North Township trustee does, and if you have any questions or comments, he'll take them live on the air at 219-845-1100. Any announcements?
The only announcements that we have, first, I always want to thank the Auto Store as a sponsor. Then, secondly, we have on September 25th, which I'll conclude the show with, we have our Victory for Veterans ride, which is always a big deal. Registration starts, I believe, at 10 o'clock. You can come as early as 8 o'clock. We'll have coffee and donuts. We usually get about 1,500 motorcycles for that, and those funds that are raised go towards dedication to the park and different things that we have done. And an example of that is the corner of 41 and Ridge Road. That was all done through the funds that were raised from the Victories for Veterans ride. And that is just a way to people to remember and also to honor the people who have served.
Now, that is on September 25th?
That is correct.
And
Sunday the 25th.
How many usually?
Pretty consistently, we hover around 1,500 motorcycles.
If you've never been to this, I usually would just ride my bike over there and walk through there. And a lot of times, people have motorcycles, and if you're not like in the clique, it seems like, they don't really want to talk to you. But not at this thing. In other words, you can walk up to anybody and they'll start telling you about their bike. As a matter of fact, this is the saddest story. And I forget his name, but he had it on his bike. He had all this stuff about a woman's name and all these little mementos on his bike. I'm like, you mind telling me about that? Well, evidently his wife. Remember when they were fixing up Calumet Avenue over here for like ever, North Calumet over by Goslin in that area?
Right.
His wife was killed there, and he dedicated his bike to his wife, and I forget her name, and I wrote a story on it for the Calumet Press. And it's almost as if you go down the row and ask everybody about their bike, especially if they're veterans.
Right.
They have this like emotional attachment in one way or another. Man, they'll tell you everything. And some of these guys, get the extra exhaust and they'll show you that, or they've tweaked the engine in some way, or they've changed the forks up front, and they'll give you, man, they'll tell you about it. So it's kind of cool to just come out there.
Yep. It is. The most exciting part for me is obviously the start when everyone's leaving 2x2 and they're riding off. It's exciting. It's loud. And it's just a moment that has gone on for 12 years that is something to be seen. And the ride will begin at 11, and then they'll come back and return probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock. We serve lunch. We have entertainment. And we have obviously some beverages and adult beverages. And it's exciting.
A lot of people hang out in the afternoon. The ride's
Correct.
kind of morning-ish, and you can hear it for miles. Some of these guys never even heard of any sort of noise adjustments to their motorcycles.
Right.
And they're proud of that. Let's move on.
We also have, just two more things. We also have on September 9th the movie Tangled for the outdoor movie, which is by the Splash Pad. That'll start at dusk, which will probably be about 7:15, 7:30 on Friday, September 9th, and the movie is Tangled. And we had Toy Story 3. We had about 300 people there last month. So again, Tangled on September 9th. And then October 22nd, if you are senior citizens, we have a Andrew Sisters act that's coming to the social center for a senior dance with an orchestra. So that's a big deal.
Yesterday, a bunch of people got out of the floodplain. You grew up in
Hessville.
Outside of the floodplain, though.
That is correct.
Yeah, outside of the floodplain, but very close to it, so you know what we're talking about. It came out, a couple of days ago that the floodplain, from Northcott to Klein Avenue, from the river to 173rd, I believe, something like that. It's a big swath of Hammond there. Over 1,000 homes and some businesses and so forth in that area that were taken out of the floodplain. What do you think about that?
I think it's a major victory for the residents And I would say probably about 2 weeks ago, guy walked up to me at Jewel, and we were talking, and he said, I know this is out of your scope, but if there's anything you could do to get me out of the floodplain. And I said, well, the process was going on, and it was a major hindrance to people to pay that $1,500 or $1,000. Now, I think that to be prudent, you have to make sure that you tell people that because you're out of the floodplain, that doesn't mean you're never going to flood. But the advantages of that, and first, I think that the collaborated effort should be taken notice or given credit to, obviously, Mayor McDermott and the City of Hammond and Stan Dostotny, the Town of Highland and the Town Council, and the President of the Council, Mr. Brian Novak. And then you want to also give, obviously, this happened under Dan Repay and the Little Calumet River Basin for doing their job to enable those people to come out. And some advantage that I think that people aren't talking about, one, is the economic development boost that you're going to have just in the residents. I can get to Cabela's, but the residents, so they're paying $1,000 less, and everyone's talked about that. But the two things that I wanted to mention is that can actually increase the people's AV or their property value who live in those communities, because if I'm looking at two homes, and one is out of the floodplain and one is in the floodplain, and I know my cost to operate or own that home is going to be $1,000 or $1,500 more, I may value that less and choose another home that might be somewhere else. So my one perspective is that the AV of those homes, or the actual value or the appraised value of those homes, will go up because they will be more marketable into the community and into the real estate market. So if that happens, I think everybody wins. And the best thing that we can say is that we have levies that have been determined by the Army Corps of Engineers that are going to work, and from that we are reaping the rewards. The byproduct of that, the secondary byproduct of that, is also the development of Cabela's and where the apartments used to be on
Kennedy Park
Apartments. So now we're going to get, from all accounts, probably a quality of life increase, because there's going to be some sort of recreational thing put at Cabela's with a hotel. They've talked about water parks. They've talked about a whole lot of different things. So now it's time to put that plan into action. But I think that the overall winners are the homeowners. And, 1,000 times 1,500 comes to, is it 10 million?
Okay.
All right. It's off the top of my head. It's either, I'm thinking it's 10 million.
I get confused in the zeros. Well, it has to be 15 million or, 1,000 times 1,500.
Right.
So keep talking, and I will bring it up on my...
And so that is what people are saving, is $15 million in those communities. And so let's hope people use those wisely. And like I said, the greatest victory of that is hopefully the increase in the market value for those homes.
Now, we're talking to Frank Mrvan III. All right, 1,000 times
1,500.
1,500.
That's on the high end.
Equals, how many zeros is that? All right, I got 1.5 million. Okay, 1.5 million.
Okay, 1.5 million.
Yeah, because listen,
Six.
That doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
All right. Let's see if it was 1,000 times 1,000, right? That's 6 zeros. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. You count the zeros.
So it's 1.5?
1.5 million, yeah.
$1.5 million in savings for people who live in those communities.
And but it's mostly Hammond on the south end.
Correct.
Now, the river and Wicker Park.
Correct.
Everything seems to be working in that area right now?
Everything seems to be working very well. We've had, no incidents whatsoever with flooding. We've managed our water as far as when it rains and the drainage. What we have going on now is, and I've tried to explain this in many different situations, so it's management of a park, but all of our drainage goes into the northeast corner of Wicker Park, which to golfers would be hole 6, and that's the way it was designed. But now, if everyone has been driving down there, and construction will begin very shortly because they tore down all those trees, the two things that I'm most excited about, because it's been a 9-year wait, is that they're going to put in new storm sewers along that area, and we're also going to get a pump station at the corner, basically at that Kinney corner, the northeast corner, which will take care of Hammond, Cabela's, Wicker Park, and also
parts of Highland.
Wicker Park Manor.
Yeah.
And also manage the flow off of Indianapolis Boulevard. So that pump station is very important to Wicker Park, so that hole 6 doesn't flood.
Getting any better on the jobs front?
Realistically, I want to say that it is eking along where it's getting a little bit better. Off the top of my head, I could tell you that a Ford auto parts store, or not an auto parts supplier and manufacturer in South Chicago had called that they were offering up jobs. Solo Cup Company was offering up jobs. Now, these are all part-time but could become full-time positions. We also have Walmart in Hammond. And I'm going to make a point come full circle. You have Walmart in Hammond that is offering up 500 jobs coming around soon. And then you had Modern Drop Forge, which is coming from Illinois. The number that it landed in, they came from Blue Island. They're landing in Maryville. They're offering up a number of about 256 jobs. I remember the Maryville town councilman saying 256 jobs. A lot of those are coming, the people from Illinois are coming to those jobs because that's a union shop. But there will eventually be able to create business opportunities because those are all good plants. I think that we have a combination of growth or trying to decrease the percentage of unemployment. But the types of jobs that are out there for the underemployed and the people who have the lower skill sets are starting to come around, and I believe the higher skill sets and the white-collar jobs are actually picking up. We haven't had a big turnaround of people coming in, accountants, lawyers, real estate agents, like we've had in the past. So I think that someone needs to communicate, which I often do, is that education is the key. I think that people have to understand that are in their 18 to 25 who thinks that a college education or a trade or some sort of skill set isn't necessary in this global economy. I'm here to tell you that it is. So what you're asking me is what we're seeing come through the door. What we're seeing come through the door is some people who have lost their jobs, that are looking for jobs, that have skill sets, but we still have a population, and I don't know if you're ever going to get away from it, that are unprepared to get into the job force. And I take it upon myself to be able to, through programs that we offer and referrals, to get those people off the treadmill of trying to live off the system and get them back into becoming self-sufficient. And so there's that combination of what we're seeing. We're seeing people that need to be told and held accountable. This is what you need to do to hold a job, and these are the jobs that are available. And then we also have the second tier, or the white-collar individuals who have skill sets, who face the circumstances of unemployment in industries that are shrinking and don't know where to go and are referred to us, that we're helping out. So that still exists, but we don't have the same numbers that we had 2 years ago. And I'm being very honest about that.
You know, that's odd that you say that, because you know, on a general sense, if you watch all of the news programs, I know you're somewhat of a news junkie also, and you listen to all of the pundits on radio and so forth, you get the feeling that the sky is starting to fall right now, and everybody's looking at Barack Obama to come up with some sort of plan to save everything. And I'm not altogether sure that it's not already kind of getting a little bit better, and no one wants to say it.
Right. Is that news if people say it's better? And I don't. And
it's not. Believe me, there's a lot of people that are suffering that are listening. So how could you say that?
Right. And I'm not. Believe me, if anyone comes to my office, I make sure that we bend over backwards to try and provide a plan for them to become self-sufficient or to be able to provide for their families. I'm also not going to underscore the fact that there are. Everyone can talk about unemployment, but I'm telling you, there are, in my scope of the world, thousands of people. 1,000 people that I know who are underemployed, that used to be working for a union, plumbers union in Chicago, who are now underemployed and making $30,000 less than what they were making a year ago. And they're going on 2 years of unemployment. And that's going on in the trades. That's going on everywhere where people have become underemployed, because it's all supply and demand. And I'm not an economic genius, but what I mean by this is when the employers dictate what they can pay, and there is a abundance of unemployed that they can choose from, they get to write their ticket of what they're paying, and obviously they're going to pay less and increase their profits, because that's why people are in business. When business increases and you begin to have a soft market when it comes to employees, then employees get to determine what they're going to get paid. And we've gone through those cycles, and right now we're in the employer market that gets to determine what they're going to pay and benefits that they offer because you have a high unemployment. And so they're picking and choosing best talent for the least amount of money. And I think that's basic economics, and we're going through that shift. But the key component is there are unemployed people, and that percentage will hover between 9 and 10% for the city or the state of Indiana. I'm sure it's much higher in our urban areas, Hammond and East Chicago. I think that, and you have a big segment of the population that are underemployed, that don't want to come to me, that are just struggling, maybe have filed bankruptcy, but are trying to find a way to provide for their family. And that is a big number. I'm telling you, it's a big number of people who have less than what they've had 2 years ago.